Oh, welcome back. Almost at the finishing line. I've been thinking about doing a couple special episodes to talk more about the broad scope structure of the first season, second season mixes. Get around to that a little bit later. Oh, wait on a second. Check out this tube. Okay, we are good. And we are recording. I've already set up OBS to record. Getting the laptop turned around. Keeping it casual for this episode as well. Beautiful day outside. I haven't been outside yet. Hopefully in the a little bit later on I'll go out, get some fresh air. But until then, let's break down this next breakdown. And yeah, okay, so making sure it's playing through my headphones. Okay, in this one we're going to really primarily focus on live edits. I don't do this as much as the sort of live mashups I like to do, switching between songs, etc. But usually at a portion of the mix, I like to do sort of live edits of the songs. And primarily what I mean by that is you're using your cue points, right? So you have a selection of your key moments in the song, and then you're switching between those moments. So let's have a look at what I'm on about in this clip, and then we'll break it down a little bit more. Okay, so there's a lot of other stuff happening here as well, which we'll get into. But that main thing is here. So like I've mentioned a few times now, we can either, from our cue points, create live edits or save cue points for later and create new ones on the spot. So in this situation, okay, you know, the funny thing is I can't remember if I switch that cue point and save that cue point, but either way, we are able to create an additional section for us to manipulate. So we can either, as this building, because this type of song is a little bit more alternative in nature, it's more of a dance alternative. So we can either switch to that section that we want, or we can create a cue point for that moment and we can come back to it. For this type of song, it's like "You Better Love Me," and then it has like some quirky sort of sound effects and breaks, and you can really amplify those moments. And specifically when I say a live edit, I believe there's really a prominent moment. I believe there should be, because I picked this clip for some reason. We just got to search through a little bit. So here we have the sort of first one that comes up, this okay. And the bass kick. Yeah. Okay, so some big drums, some Middle Eastern vibes in there, some congas, African beats in there, so a mixture of different influences. I think it's really cool. So you see how that's a great example of this sort of live edit. So in this situation, we're not creating a cue point on the spot for later. We are switching to another cue point. So in this song, there's a very super, sort of progressive style build, sort of chorus that's happening. It's creating that tension, it's creating that build up that we want. And compared in this first song, we have that first sort of chorus or drop that is more percussive and has those, bigger drums and congas and that more of that sort of elements of the big room and the big percussive instrumentation, which was okay for that short little part, but now we're, wanting to build it up and ramp it up. So we're able then to switch over to another point of the song. Instead of waiting for the song to go on for however long it is, you can intensify the progression of the song. So instead of it going by its own length, you can shorten it down, create those live edits of that song, which sometimes might just be a great alternative for the track. In this case, we have one section that's a lot more percussive, and then we're going into more of a section that's a little more progressive and a little more melodic and intention and then building up, which is awesome. So we're able then to shorten it down and display a few key moments of the song in a shorter span. So that's really just the main thing I wanted to show for this one, was this practical application of using these cue points in a mix setting. So it doesn't have to be just, okay, that's cue point A going to this cue point, and okay, going from this point to that point. You can really create on the spot quick transitions if you time it well. When I was first starting out doing these cue points, I would do them smack on the beat, right? So I'll pick verses, the verse, choruses, etc. And for my performing style, for the way I like to mix, I found that I always preferred having a bar or so before the main chorus. And that would be something I would encourage you guys to try out in your approach to setting up cue points, especially when you want to do live edits of those songs in your mix. You're setting up your cue point a bar or so beforehand, so you have a little bit of wiggle room to work with those cue points. So what do I mean? So you have this section of the song coming through, and it's a little bit, it's quite aggressive. It just it goes straight into the drop of the next one. It's a bit unnatural because no matter how precise you are, it's going to be always a little bit off. So when you know that you set up your cue points, always give you a bit like a bar or so of breathing room. You can then time it well, usually on like a shout out or a vocal moment, like a bass kick. There's something that's random that happens in a song. I'm not a big fan of those, build, and then, supercalifragilistic, boom, boom, boom. Or like, apples and cream, boom, boom, boom. Some random vocal, some supercalifragilistic. Supercalifragilistic, boom, boom. Someone's gotta do that eventually. I'm not a huge fan of those. I think it's a bit just, generic. But instead of just, complaining about them and be like, use them to your advantage. In these situations when you are switching and creating these quick transitions, some of those moments you can really use it to your benefit and create something spontaneous. So in this situation, you can use like bass kick, or what happened, and then bam, it goes straight into it. So you can use, in those situations, try and find something that's meaningful, like this situation where it's something more like, bass kick, and then like, oh, it's okay, it's actually bass gonna come in or something like that. Maybe don't try and go for something that's too generic, just completely left field and like, some random word, some random, albatross, like TUX. You don't want that, but find something that at least is powerful, like or someone swearing or something like that. Really, gives it, puts it front and center. Something that gives some sort of meaning, some sort of context of what you want to do. In terms of just creating these sort of live edits, that's really the key. That's really it's quite straightforward. Just some simple sort of best practices. The first main one is just give yourself a bit of breathing room when you are setting up your cue points, right? So when you are able, having the ability to really set up cue points. Armin van Buuren did a really awesome video about this years ago. I think it's just on YouTube somewhere. You can find it. And his course also on the masterclass course that he's done as well, showing some, the way he approaches DJing. And, the one fundamental things that his, approach is based on is just having really structured cue points. So and having meaningful cue points. So when you load up a song, you know exactly, okay, the chorus of the song, or a key moment in the song, or a cool sort of vocal shout or percussive element. So that something like that is just good practice. And in particular, if you're wanting to switch between the song and create your own sort of edit, then giving yourself a little bit of breathing room between the cue points. Don't just set up at straight at the drop. Set up at least a bar beforehand to give you that space. That will be just another sort of best practice. Set up your cue points, right? So number one, at the key moments, at cool moments within the song, and secondly, give yourself a bit of breathing room in those cue points you set up. Give yourself at least a bar, just so you can quickly transition to them, and you can add some effects or something like that, just so it's a little more musical and it's less noticeable that you're switching between things. That's not to say that you can't have it bang on. You just gotta be very, very sharp and bang on the grid to do something like that. Yeah, and lastly, never be closed off, never be completely oblivious to what's happening in mixing. Just focus on, that's my cue point and that's it. Particularly if you're working with a live crowd, sometimes you want to have certain parts extended, and the crowd might be really vibing with it, and that's okay. It's like it's almost in the perspective of playing a certain song more than once. The crowd's really digging that song, and you play only like the verse or chorus, something, bring it back in, and sometimes have a bit of fun, see how many times you can play it. And if you get the same reaction, cool, just have a bit of fun with it. Nothing wrong with playing a song that's really vibing with your crowd, 5, 6 times if you want. It's all about interacting with that crowd when you're out in that live setting, and having the capability like this to really extend those key moments in a song, to go back to a certain one, to if something's not really working and it's a bit lower key, you can quickly switch over to something else to really keep it going. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, some really key, just ideas, some best practices to think about when you are wanting to set up your cue points. Next up on this breakdown, let's look at just some of the things I'm doing in the background from the sort of main sort of live edit that I'm looking at. So I think I've said so a few more times than I want in this breakdown. Creating, your cue points is one thing, that's fantastic. But always making sure you're bringing the next one, you're figuring out what's your next one, and setting up that one is really important. So you can always go to that one and then always come back. You don't have to just have a forward momentum or progression of the mix. You can always go back to another one, extend things out. So why am I really, I've set it up, I've turned it around, played it at the cue point that I want, and why am I spinning it even more? Well, one of the reasons that could be the case is that cue point where I set it up from doesn't really work for that sort of quick transition of what I'm wanting to do right now. When I was setting up the original cue points, perhaps it could have been a different interpretation. I maybe wanted a more classical mix in or something like that. Perhaps on this one, I've sped things up a little bit. I've switched over to another cue point of the song, and this one isn't going to work. So I've moved it slightly forward or slightly back to where there's a vocal line. So instead of going straight into the drop, we are playing it a little bit back. So there's a vocal edit there for what I need. That just is one example. Always being fluid in your cue points is just key here. Use them as just a base, right? So you're less stressed out about your mix, okay? And then when you relax and you're into the mix, then just use them as a starting point, and just quickly listen. Okay, cool. I remember this one. Blah blah blah. And there's another cue point that I can use. Yeah. So that just use them as just a go-to, but don't be just so strict on them. Like that's got to be that one. That's it. Just quickly have them so you can jump through the song and then be very flexible, move it forward, move it back, pick a different cue point, just be very experimental about them. So one of the things we can do in this situation is, if I've picked another cue point, right, and the song's at different tempo, okay, say, the current song we're playing is at 130 BPM, okay, and the song that we've picked is at 125 or 126, and we don't want to increase the speed of the song, as one example. Second example could be that we're running out of time, okay, and we don't really get a chance to speed it up in time, but we have time to lower the first one musically, okay. And that could be another example. A third example could be that you want to detune the current song without the master tempo on, because you feel that it's going to be more impactful for the song that's coming in, or musically they're going to blend harmonically better together. So that could be another reason to detune the song slightly from 130 to 125 or something like that. Another reason is that in this section you want to just draw a little more attention to things, slow things down a little bit. And for me, it's more musical to add effects, and especially at the ending of a song, to really draw it out. It's less noticeable, it's more musical in this way, to just slow down. And see how we are, when from here and detuning is slightly moving down. Okay, and nothing. Now, what happened here? Okay, I could say that it was on purpose. I could come up with different million reasons. The simple fact is I forgot to bring up the fader. Okay, and it just happens, right? Yeah. That's why you always want to give a bit of space in your cue points, right? So you have just a little bit of space. You notice here that we brought in the song, but I was so focused on the detuning and adding in the effects that I forgot to bring up the fader for what I wanted to do. I had brought up a song, I was focused on finding another cue point that I wanted to work with, and all this other stuff that I need to also bring up the volume so you can actually hear what I want to do. And that happens from time to time. The key here is to be prepared for something like that. And like we talked about, the best practice is always give yourself a little bit of space with your cue points, a bar, 2 bars, just for something like this, and then you're okay, you're in the clear, it's not as noticeable. Obviously I would prefer it to be a little bit smoother, but it's just interesting, it's like just popped in my head. Michael Jackson was talking about one of his performances, that classic Billie Jean moonwalk performance, and he talked about how when he did that performance, I think it was at the Grammys, when he did that moonwalk, and then he did this the ballerina sort of up onto the toes, and then he came back down, right? And watching it from our perspective, that's the coolest thing ever, and like, oh man, he went up there and then he came back down, and like and all that, and we didn't notice anything wrong with that performance, right? It was killer, and the moonwalk, and then up on the toes and all that. But when he did a reflection on it with some reporter, whatever it was, he talked about the moment, and like they asked him, what do you think about this, etc. And he talked about how it was actually originally intended that he stay up there on his toes. That famous move, his practice, the way he had done it was that he wanted to stay up there. But obviously, because of, there's so many things that you can't obviously calculate when you are performing in that kind of setting. You're obviously a little more excited than usual. Like the crowd, the energy, the live crowd, and everything else that's happening. It's always going to be a little bit easier when you're practicing. And you're in that situation. He did it, but then he wasn't, for some reason, he just didn't stay up there. And he was talking about the fact that, he had practice and planned for him, the original idea was him to stay in that position for a little bit longer, but that didn't happen. And he didn't make like a face or anything like that, and make it so noticeable. He just went with it and made it so natural that you just didn't even notice. And this is what I talked about in one of the other episodes, that if something is a mistake or something is not what you 100% wanted, that's okay, but don't change the facial expression, what you're doing. Don't make it noticeable that it's not 100% what you wanted. Okay, so I had that pause, right, that I wanted, and then we created that really intimate moment, and then I wanted to play it, and the song comes in, okay? But that didn't happen. And instead of me making a face and be like, like, oh, and then, I'm done with this, and off I go, you just think very quickly, okay, why is there no sound? What's going on? And then you bring up the fader, okay? So let's watch it one more time. Cool. So you really have to be just quick on your toes and just make sure you keep your professionalism, make sure you keep your focus and attention on what you're doing, and applying some of the best practices we talked about, and having that breathing room, okay, moving it back. So you saw how many times I moved around the song. I was looking for a better cue point and all that, and I gave myself a bit of that breathing room that when I came in, it was okay. Back to the basics, whoa, bring it back to the basics, in the bass, okay, wow, bring it back to the basics, bring it back to the basics, kick it basics, and the bass, the bass kick. You notice in this point, I'm bringing up my cue points, okay, and I'm saying, all right, am I switching now or not, okay, because I know that what I want to get to, and I decide, because of that, that split second difference that I made with that slight error, I think it's better if I give it a little more time now. If I do a quick switch again, my brain is saying it might be too much, because it's not, it's slightly different than what you originally intended to do. So we're allowing the song to play through now, just so we can go back to some sort of normality. There isn't like a super big change. And this is something I mentioned, you always have to be careful not to switch over too much. It can create a bit of distance. It can create a bit of a disconnection with the audience. If you're switching 1, 2, 3, 4, if you're switching too much, you don't let the song have time to breathe. And for me now, I'm getting bored, okay? Because there isn't much happening. It's sort of the same thing. Nothing really new's coming in. It's the same sort of style of progression and percussive elements, bar after bar. Okay? Now, you're doing that live edit musically. So 1, 2, 3, and now. Okay? You're not doing what Okay, so whenever you're wanting to do something like this, think about, in this example, going with that group. It doesn't mean you have to do every single time. You can always, cut it, like we mentioned several times now. In this example, we're going with that group. We're wanting to maintain that progression. Okay. Even this example, I'm giving a little bit of a change. We're not 100% on that groove, okay? So we are going slightly off, and we're really accentuating that bass kick, and then we're moving on. Okay? And, this is like I mentioned, you have to be fluid with this. Even though I might think, okay, I want to maintain the groove on this moment, I just proved myself wrong. And okay, I know I didn't keep on the groove. There was a slight pause, accentuating that bass kick, and we're moving forward. Okay? The mix is fragile sometimes, okay? And we've talked about, always being careful not to lose your mix. And I think it's been difficult to really give you a practical example of that. And here I think we've found one of those moments where it's really a clear example of when you can almost lose it if you're not careful. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so first and foremost, when I was originally listening to it, I heard that click, right? And I felt that it could work well with what was happening. I thought it could tonally blend well together, right? And I've talked about this before when I like to give that additional sort of support for the low end. I like the blend that sort of kicks together. And we've done this in a different example. In this example, it doesn't work, right? So when we hear it coming in, there, you hear it? So I pressed the cue point, so I pressed play, and we're playing it, okay? And it's not 100% on the grid, we're moving it in, right? But I'm not really happy with how it's blending. It's too noticeable, it's distracting. And you see how the kick is similar, right? But it's not as tonal as this one. It's the one that I have coming in is a little more rounded, it's more sculpted, it's more developed. This one is a little less, it's a bit thinner, okay? It's more treble than the sort of, than a rounded, low and high and middle. It's a lot more, it's sculpted to be more high end, right? Rather than, low to mid. What do you mean? I just charged you. My little earbuds like, you're using volume, using battery life. But you notice how now it's slightly different, right? Because we're slowly bringing it in and we're creating that blend, right? So and this is a situation where you think something's gonna work, but when you bring it in straight away, it doesn't really work. Particularly if I was too confident in making sure it's bang on the grid, and it wasn't. It was slightly off, and we're bringing it in and still sort of not working. There's other material going on, and we quickly cut it out, and now we're slowly bringing it in. But you notice as we're slowly bringing it in, you can't notice it. And that was my original intention. We wanted to sculpt it around so we give more support for that low-end content that I felt was missing, and we blend it in like we want now. Okay, so this one's a little tuned differently. It's almost piercing. It's very almost feels like a very sort of deliberate sort of pitch in a certain frequency. Okay, now I'm listening to the low end. So let's pay very close attention to that low end. So I hope you can notice that you can tell when the two are playing, but it's not as noticeable. It's creating a bit of an unusual texture. And for me, I like that. I like that unusual sort of texture because it gives something different to that low end kick that we don't usually hear. Okay, let's watch it one more time. Okay, so we're going from this very sort of, uplifting thing right? We'll bring in this next song. It's not working, so we're cutting out, bring it much slower now. Gradually bring it in. Now this is a gamble, right? So right now it's a quite a big gamble. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the mix, right? And we've had some much bigger style songs playing. We had bigger style sort of big room percussive sort of drop. We've had a very sort of melodic tension building drop, and then we'll sort of decided to cut all that out and go into something very minimalistic. Not much going on here. And this is a moment where things can really fall apart very quickly if you're not careful. It's almost like when you play a very, very popular pop, banger, and the whole crowd's going and it's crazy, and then everyone's really enjoying that pop, hit, etc. And you play it through, but then you don't give support for that, because you played this enormous hit, whatever. It's really challenging then to for the next song to live up to that, the glorification of that one you just played, particularly if it's like a hit that's currently big, going into another song, right? That's going to be able to give support for that is tricky. And what can happen is that usually after that super high, you can lose the energy very, very quickly, particularly if you're slowly blending something in. I think in those situations your approach would be fast mixing. One song straight into the next one, into the big chorus or glorious breakdown, something like that. If you're doing it like from the get-go and you're waiting for things to build in, particularly if you switch genres, which I see a lot of people do. You go from a super popular sort of hit song and then gonna completely do it in another opposite because it's like it's reached that high, right? And you want to and then now it's a great time to change and move into something else. No, it's not. Okay, no, it's not. It's the worst possible time to now you decide to switch genres, right? So you finally got that peak of that energy. You want to maintain it a little bit longer, right? It's different. I wouldn't even say it's even if it's your crescendo. Don't do that. You don't want to do something like that. I don't think it's a cool idea. You lose all that energy, and it's not like cool now to switch over to different genres. It's a bit generic. Switching genres musically is different when you're blending and you're not noticing everything. If you want to play, a big sort of pop, hit, then you gotta play another one. And you gotta play another one. And you gotta play another one. At least like 3 in a row, right? To really get it, right? You're pumping. And then switch over. You can't just play one. You really gotta get the crowd sweating. You really gotta, let's do this. And then switch over. Okay? At least from my perspective. It's almost like playing an hour, show, and it's like your show. And like it's a big, event and everything. If people are, spending 150, $200 and plus, they come and see, your show, you better be playing at least 2 hours. And for me, it's like minimum 2 hours. I would be expecting a 3 hour show for something like that. Full production. You're asking people to pay their hard money. At least $200, 150 for like, just your show. It's not a festival, anything like that. We're back. Through my trial and error, I've come to know the red flags when recording, and one of those red flags are when your earpiece, the battery dies out, and then you have Bluetooth running on both. Big sign of something's gonna happen. I forgot to turn on the do not disturb for function on the phone, and the phone was heating up and wasn't liking it, and when this cut out, that cut out, and this as well, and didn't like it. This actually was staying in, but I mean, the connection for the Bluetooth cut out, but the recording was there. Didn't like it, didn't cause any issues, so I double checked. So what happens when you trial and error and they're not gonna get me this time. And I've gotten used to them now since, over the years of always having them. I kicked it as well when I was approaching the son of a bitch. But now I just take it in stride. I'm just like, yeah, I'm getting used to this. I'm gonna grab myself a drink and everything else. But I also forgot to turn off YouTube. So YouTube was in the background. I wasn't playing, thankfully, but because we are recording in 4K, it's asking. I was asking for a lot. I was looking at some of the new games that came out. I like to do it from time to time. It's my favorite pastime, as for many. And yeah, I heard this. I heard that the new Call of Duty was alright. So I just want to check out some reviews and just check out some gameplay. I'm not gonna get a chance to play it. I will get a chance just to quickly look at some bits and bobs when I'm having lunch and stuff like that. But it's nice. I think it's cool. I'm off topic here, but I think it's cool that when develop and stuff, just take time to just make it good. It's not about every single year. I never understood that. Just take some time and do something good. You don't have to go as bonkers as Grand Theft Auto does and spend like 10 years or whatever it is on developing a new game. They're in a league of their own. But you can spend a few years just really making a solid game out of it, and good storyline, improving upon what people like about it, the fast movement, the what makes those games great, and just like what Porsche does, for example. They don't change the mold too much. There's really small little improvements on what they know works, and that's and then you can really make a great car. Just improve. That's what Apple does as well. They stop doing like super incredible designs, and they just this works, and they just improve, and then you get what happens is you get a really stable, at least for me, get a really reliable and stable phone, and that's really important for me. That's why I stick with the Apple, because I know that it's tried and true and it works, and it's very stable for the most part. Yeah, just not an Apple endorsement or anything like that. I just know that they're reliable, and I really as someone who deals with technology like every day, constantly for just every day, hours and hours, and I'm not a huge finicky person. I don't like getting into under the hood too much, because there's so much that I need to do, and I just want things to work. Right? I just want to pick up the guitar and I want it to work. I want to turn on my deck or the piano or the computer, and I want it to work. But it's the time to really go under the hood and really look at at the analytical things, and really be analytical about things. Really geek out. Really go Animal House on the bitch. Break the guitar. There's a time for that. There's a time when you want things to work, and Apple's always been for me very stable in that regard. The iPad, it works. There's nothing too finicky about it, and just turn it on and it gets it does what you need to do. But anyway, back onto here. Let me just be patient with me 1 second. I just really want to make sure this syncs up, because we are playing with fire here. And the last time I had a double like this, it was an absolute nightmare to sync together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the record here. Press and record now. Okay, besides my little rant there, we quickly, to wrap this all up, we were touching on dealing with playing like a super pop song, right, and not losing your mix, right? So when we're looking at this, we are starting basically from scratch, right? So let's look at quickly. Okay, so one thing you notice as I was counting there, so you have at least 16 bars or so of a build up, and there isn't much happening, right? So it's very full to the floor. There isn't even an offbeat or a hi-hat or an offbeat or anything like that to really help maintain the interest. So with something like this, you just have to be very careful with it because you can lose the mix. You have all this great stuff beforehand and everything, but that means nothing. If you go into something like this, if you have something building and people expecting something, right? So you're creating all this tension, and then you give almost a completely secondary beat you give a secondary beat like we talked about, the creating those mini pockets of those sort of off groove moments. You're basically continuing the groove, but you've cut everything out and you're giving something that's nothing's there. So you have this big pocket of energy. Great example of this, like we talked about, you play this like your big hit song, right? And then after that you play like a very sort of mellow, and it takes forever to build up and it's just completely left field. No one even knows the song, and then just looking, and then half the people leave, and that's not what you want. Another example of this we touched on before the camera cut out is that if you're playing your own show, right, and you're playing a show and you're inviting people to your show, and it's gonna cost them 150, $200, whatever it is, even sometimes more than that, because depending on the level of production, everything like that, you really want to deliver. And, you look at some of the classic rock shows and everything like, man, they delivered. They made no excuses. They didn't whine about it. Looking at 2+ hour shows minimum, because you're getting people that hard money to come and watch you play. They're taking time away. And Michael Jordan was a legend about this. He knew that people are coming to see me. I'm gonna give them the best that I can have. And he's running up and down, etc. And then you have people nowadays like, oh, I can't do a 3-hour show, blah blah this. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just it's like first, it's like you're doing nothing anyway in terms of the music. Like you're just mumbling some words on top line. All the production, everything's done for you. And everything, all the marketing, everything else is done for you. You just wear some stupid clothes, and because you're an artist, and then you complain about not even being able to do a 3-hour show. I mean, Prince did everything on his own and played a multitude of instruments, and they played 2+ hour shows and they do after parties. The guy was a beast, but he knew that he knew what was at stake. He even mentioned that I want to be able to do this as my career. Not everyone has the luxury of getting a big label and a ton of money behind them. He was independent about what he wanted to do, and creatively, he didn't want anyone to bully him in the direction he wanted to go in. And even though he had the label behind him, the money, he never let that deter him from his work ethic and playing the way he wanted to. And that's why he became one of the greatest, if not the greatest musician we've ever seen. It's just about maintaining that work ethic, and really it goes beyond even maintaining a work ethic. Because again, that's very selfish. It's you, it's me. You're stepping away and looking at from the perspective of it's about respecting the audience. It's about appreciating, the people that come and see you. The fact they're coming to see you when they could go and watch someone completely else, and they're coming to watch you, and you gotta give them, the best show that you can and everything you've got in that show. Otherwise, what's the point? If you're just gonna half-ass it, then don't do massive shows. Just do a small show on, or just don't tour. Not every person's designed for. Not every artist is designed, or a performer is not designed to tour. Playing smaller shows, doing online stuff, streaming, etc. But it really comes to understanding, understanding and respecting your audience, and appreciating the fact that the money that they've earned and worked for is paying for what you're doing, and you want to deliver for that, and you want to inspire them to whatever they're doing. From my perspective, when I go and watch a show, I'm expecting it to be at least 2 hours. None of this hour and a half, 45 minutes. At least 2 hour show. If we're coming just to see you, it's not a festival. It's not a 45-hour set per person. It's a show. We're coming to see you. Yeah, that's just a bit of a rant again. But yeah, it's just something that bothers me. But again, it's just my personal opinion, for this. So I'm sure that you might feel different, and we talk about the health of the artist, etc. No one's asking to play 300 shows, etc. Balance it out, push it forward. Look at what Sir Elton John has done. Playing it over years. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. a show over several years. You don't have to do it all in 1 year. Yeah, just pacing yourself, but making sure you deliver on the show. Yeah, but yeah, that's in some way connects well with not losing, for me as well, not at least not losing the mix, right? So at least take it as a rule of three. At least 3 songs of like hit songs before you change over to something drastically different. That way you're at least playing almost 10 minutes of something, right? And you're maintaining some resemblance of groove and energy. You're maintaining that high energy. I think a key aspect of when you are switching between genres and in the mix is you're looking at maintaining a certain level of energy, right? And for something like this, we are being a bit risky. We're being very risque here, and we're sort of cutting everything. We've created this call, this tension, and then we've cut it out, right? And then we're just being like, okay. And then we're sort of starting from scratch, basically. And we're just playing. But I knew that when it comes into the drop, it's all going to be forgiven. Again, from where I'm looking at things, because it's metallic, it's heavy, it's just in your face, and it's just like, yeah, and it's like, damn, that was worth it, like, and when we are creating that tension, then we're stopping it, and then we're ramping everything up again. It's creating, it's creating a bit of that anger, it's creating a bit of angst, it's creating a bit of uncertainty, a bit of like, what is going on? Why did you do that? Like, and you're creating a bit of that, like, come on, like, and you're creating a bit of impatience. You're creating impatiency. You're asking the audience to be just a little bit patient with you to see it through. And because we're nearing the end of the mix, I feel that it's something that you can be a little more risque with, and you can really try and do something a bit left field. But yeah, for me it works, because now you'll just you got that Steve Angelo sort of Swedish House Mafia sort of vibe kicking in, and yeah, it rocks. Cool. Yeah. So that was a little bit super sort of that way and then that way back again. Let me just stop this. But look, it might seem a bit sort of passive aggressive, whatever, or might seem a bit sort of confrontational. I don't see it that way. I'm just really passionate about what I do. And look, not everyone gets an opportunity to go up on stage with some famous DJ and there you go, you've made it. Deadmau5 mentioned this as well. He's really had to work to establish himself, and he never he didn't get that special backpack, and then there you go. Not everyone gets that opportunity, and I guess it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. But we all have to trust our own process, and with that, you develop your own perspective and your own way of viewing things, and you come to a point where you look at creating the art that you want to create, and you start focusing on yourself and the way you want to do things, and allowing everyone else to do the way they want, right? So as I mentioned, this isn't sort of like my way is the best and your way is this. It's nothing like that. It's just this is my perspective, this is how I view things. I come from that background where you are wanting to respect the audience. It's not just about you, it's about looking outside of yourself. With too much in here, it's too much about how we're feeling, how that I'm this, I'm that. You need to look out and realize that without your audience, without people like you guys, without the community here that's supporting, watching this, I wouldn't be able to do this, right? And so I might not feel 100% every day. I rarely do 100%. Maybe it's like 90, 95, 80, 85. Sometimes it's like maybe I should even go out of bed. But you just keep going forward and you do what you can that day, right? And you do what you are able to do for that day. Sometimes it's a lot more productive, sometimes it's not. And you just, and you've seen some of these videos that I just wasn't up for it, but you do it anyway. And some of them are a lot more high energy, some of them are a bit like, but that's just what it is. And you have to respect the fact that what I'm able to do, not many people are able to do that, and you just have to respect that. And that's one thing I love about Prince and why he's such a huge inspiration, because he said that it's like I'm going to do whatever everything I can to make sure that this is my life, that I can become the best that I can become at this, and make sure that I am able to do this. And he knew the challenges and the tribulations and everything he had to go through to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, just because it just shows you, even though he was so talented, he could do all that, you could still see that without the work ethic, he wouldn't have been able to do any of that. Even he didn't just sit around and be like, I am talented, I can play all this, and just and you should just listen to me. He still put in the work, and had something to say, and that's key. And I think that the core there is he respected his audience, and he knew that without them he wouldn't be able to do what he does. I think that's very, very important. And you need to step away from you need to change the perspective, and realize that you aren't necessarily doing it for yourself. And yes, music is a very personal thing, but you are looking at, you're sharing your feelings, etc. When you put it out into the world, you are in some ways a collective. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And sometimes you might just not feel like it, and then sometimes you might this, sometimes, but you have to realize it's not just about you. And if you want to do like a big show, you want to do like your own sort of event and etc., then you gotta deliver, and you gotta make sure that you're respecting the people that come in to see you. Some people might drive hours to see you, might travel across the country, might be from a completely different continent just to come and see you. And for you to just be like, play an hour and a half or whatever, that's not for me. So you gotta go out there and deliver, you go show stuff. But anyway, besides that bit of rant off, and just I guess just best practices again, just professionalism and some things to sort of think about when you are wanting to get into music and be a professional in music. Just like looking at other professions, being at top of your game. Looking back at this breakdown, setting up cue points, setting up your live cue points, looking at giving yourself time, giving yourself space in between those cue points is very important. You notice sometimes you might have an error, or sometimes you might forget to move something, like move a fader up, or you might just forget something to do with the mix or change the tempo. These things happen. You're human. It's a live mix. You don't want to be too hard on yourself. The key, especially in something like this, when we're just doing a free form, it's being very little sort of, practice behind it. You're just, you're trying to be like very authentic in the mix. You just have to be okay with these things, right? These things take time to really hone and practice. And very few people can, just bring in some tracks and then make very, very minor mistakes or errors and stuff like that, and really be complex in the way they're mixing and transitioning and stuff like that. So just be okay with that. I think MJ missed like wasn't like thousands of shots, but compared to how many he made, but no one looks at the amount of shots they missed. So the same thing here, and just but be smart about it and allow yourself some breathing room in your cue points, at least a bar or so, just so you can bring it in more musically. Just some best practices, setting up, just the choruses, some key breakdown moments, a vocal, point, or some cool sample that's in the song. That's standard stuff to look at when you are setting up your cue points. And the one thing I would say is to be quite sort of open to changing your cue points in the songs. Don't be super rigid in that's it. Always be willing to add in new cue points as you're going through the mix. Be very fluid And then when you're even playing a cue point, just search through and listen to the other ones, and see which one might work better. And sometimes that song in general might just not work for that moment anymore, and you find a different song. Yeah. Just one thing, when you are approaching sort of live edits, timing is key, right? You want to do it musically and work with it musically. You can create those sort of very sort of present sort of secondary beats, and you're adding in those effects and everything, and stop the groove quickly and then bring it in. But the key is just really doing it musically. Yeah, we touched on quickly for the manual adjustments of the tempo. Sometimes allowing the song to naturally finish and then extending that out for me is more musical, and you can really you can detune the song like that. Going from 130 to 125, you can do it quicker. At the ending of the song is less noticeable, and you can add some effects in and really extend it out a little bit longer. You can create a nice little cool sort of detune effect in the end. That's one approach. You can do it as the song's playing, and slowly decrease it. You can even try it without the master tempo on, and then do it that way. You're freestyle. You're playing the game, but you don't have any of the maps or anything. You're doing it in this sort of hardcore mode. That's one approach to also try out. Listen with the ears. Can you tell when it's starting to sort of change the pitch? Yeah, and finally, always be looking from the perspective of using your emotional intelligence, right, and feeling the vibe, right. We naturally can feel that when you go into a space or go into a club. You can feel if the energy is there, or if the energy just goes out. It's someone's like the energy's high, and then someone says something and gives tells a really depressing story. Then the whole energy just yeah. We can feel that. We're very emotional creatures. That's what you want when you are mixing, you are DJing. So you can feel the energy, you can feel the crowd. And if you are playing a super popular song, make sure you're doing at least three, at least like a rule of three. Three big ones before you decide to go into some, I don't know, hip hop, funk song from the 80s or something like that, or change it up and go into like an 80s inspired sort of dance song or something like that. It just creates a bit of continuity. It creates it maintains that energy, right? And allows the audience to maintain the energy, a bit of a high, just for a little bit before you change things up. We talked about being careful when you are mixing fast, straight out the gate. Just going 1, 2, 3, so, and then people just like, going to something like that later in the mix, then when you've really got people, but you want to make sure that people are grooving with you. If you're struggling to even get the audience to go with you, mixing fast and stuff like this, I personally think that it will disconnect you from the audience even more. But again, take everything with a grain of salt. Live situations, every audience is different. Everything can be interpreted completely different. So just take everything I say, but take it with a grain of salt, and take it with your experience and your own interpretation, and see what works. Maybe I'm completely wrong about it and it might work for you. Awesome. Again, I'm just sharing with you some of my experiences, some of the things that some of the things I've interpreted, and then have, showing me how I don't want to present them. And I think that's key. You look at things that bother you and really think about why they bother you, and from there you can create your own unique style and interpretation of how you want to present your mix. I think that's sort of the biggest takeaway from here. Look at the things that bother you in a mix and things that you don't like, and then make sure you don't do those, or make sure you do them better in the way you mix. And that way you can create your own style, and that way you're contributing much more to the scene than just you being angry about it. Because that does nothing. Being proactive about it and creating your own thing, do so much more. Awesome. Thank you so much. If you are one of those that have watched this full episode, stuck with me through the whole thing, including some of my left field trajectory points, not left, but yeah, it's just an expression, completely sort of off tangent, things in my rants. Thank you so much for sticking around. I don't know why my nose is, it's like so running all of a sudden. Anyway, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I will catch you on the next one, always at the end of the season. But I would like to create a sort of special episode where we're looking at the full mix and we're looking at key moments when I am sort of changing and looking more at the different genres and how to approach that. We'll do it when we finish all the main sort of breakdowns. Okay, cool. I really enjoyed editing this one. I better stop. I'm really keen to talk today. I think that's it. Yeah, I might even do the next one back to back. Yeah, I am feeling good about talking today. I'll see you.